Pros and cons of living in Humboldt. Welcome back in. Much love. Trav here from Humboldt, from the Redwood Forest. Nice air, nice fog, nice greenery. And I've been thinking a lot about the pros and cons of living here. I've done pros and cons of living in Seattle. I'm a native. Lived in Seattle for 23 years. And then Humboldt has been my home base for the last 4 years. Also recently did pros and cons of living in San Francisco, and that city is great, honestly. So I'm here in Humboldt. I'm thinking about the pros and cons. I've been doing a whole lot of travel. This is for those of you who live here. Maybe you can correct me if you've lived longer. I'm just going to tell you what my take has been, being here for 4 years and traveling a lot, comparing it to other places. This is for those of you who are thinking about moving here, coming here for school or something like that. So number one, and this is the reason that I came here, I wanted to get out of the city and get into nice geography, and Humboldt is very nice for this. You have forest. Even if you're in the city, the forest is very, very close. It's less than a mile from my home here. You also have the ocean, is very close. If you want to get to the beach, very, very close. You may need a car for that, but or a bicycle. But if you want to be between the coast and you want to be on the forest and have clean air, it's great. There aren't a lot of planes, which we'll get into, which is nice if you're a sensitive person. There's very little noise pollution. Part of the geography as well is it's surrounded by farms, so you get great food, great local farms. You go do CSA type stuff, community supported agriculture, actually go to the farm and pick it. A lot of farmers markets, stuff like that. So it's easy to be very outdoorsy, be very healthy, and have a low stress life here. I think that's great, and those are the major pros of it. So one of the reasons why it is the way it is the fog. You can see the fog, and we're in March right now, and this is like 6 months of the year. It's pretty much covered in fog. That's a pro and a con, because it doesn't get too cold and it doesn't get too hot. The summers are quite nice. But if you don't like fog and overcast, you might have a hard time, because you're not going to see the sun for a week at a time or more during the fog season, and that can be pretty brutal. But during the summer, real nice. And again, it's not too hot or too cold. So with the fog is really interesting, because it has been that way and will continue to be that way for just the way the weather works here, which results in people, or in it being a difficult place to fly into and out of. It was a military base to practice difficult landings during World War II, World War I. And as a result, there's not a major airport, and there never will be. So you're not going to hear a lot of planes, but it's also very hard to get out of here. You can fly out of here, but it's expensive, and even if you're down to pay, 10% of the flights are canceled or delayed, so you can't count on making your connection. I've been stuck overnight somewhere, and it just happens. It's real common. So it's very hard to get out of here, and as a result, it's hard for people to get here as well, which means you're not going to have so many friends come and visit as if you're living in San Fran. And Portland, Seattle, you have friends. Like, I'm in Seattle for the weekend, what's good? I'm in San Fran for the weekend, what's good? You won't have that in Humboldt. It's hard to get people out here because it's hard to get to. Really only anyone would be out here if they were driving down the coast, and most people aren't going to do that. So it is a 5-hour drive to San Fran, to the Bay, if you want to fly out that way or visit. It's an 8-hour drive to Portland, about a 12-hour drive to Seattle, but that's a pro and a con. It's isolated. Shout out to these birds. But it's hard to get out of. If you like to travel a lot, it's a pain. If you like to have host friends, they're not going to pass through here nearly as much as they would pass through the cities. So that's a major con. Culture. It's a pretty white place. We'll have to look at the census, but there's something like 100,000 people, so it's small, and there's a small pool of people. It's not super tiny, but it's small. We'll talk about that. It's like 90% white. It was settled recently, 1800s, which is one of the reasons why the soil is so nice and the food is so good. But there's a history. They kicked out the Chinese people a little over 100 years ago. They slaughtered the natives. You know, I don't want to go back and undo that stuff and be like, hey, you're bad and your grandfather did this and I'm mad at you. But that's the way it is there's not, I mean, there's 100,000 people and there's 10 to 20% are not white, but it's majority white. You're not going to find a lot of minority communities here. If you want to, it's going to be an issue for me, for you. You know, it's one of the reasons why I would rather live in Hawaii, although there's pros and cons to that as well. As a mixed Asian person, you know, I'm unique and I'm exotic here, but I don't necessarily want that. It is a con to me, is that it's all white. Sorry, white people. I'm half white, so I'm not too mad about it. I can fit in, I can pass, but definitely prefer that about Hawaii. The culture as well, 100,000 people. Many of them are travelers and involved in the weed industry. So the biggest business here is cannabis, and that's really where the people with money are. People in general in Humboldt are not, it seems poor. You get the feeling that people are poor. The townies seem poor. I mean, there's professionals, but there aren't that many professionals. There isn't that much industry. There's all these zoning rules and restrictions on chains and stuff like that. And most of the people who have money are going to be the drug kingpins who have farms and ranches and stuff and grow a bunch of pot, of which there are many. The majority of Humboldt geographically is these pot farms. Personally, I'm not involved in that, but there could be money to be made, although I think the gold rush is not over, but there was a big boom. A lot of people, one of the cool things about it, I think, is that you have a lot of travelers coming in to work seasonally. We call them trimmigrants. Basically, you have the weed harvest, and these people come in and weed tourism, you know, work tourism, seasonal work, chop up the buds, make $200 a day, 300, 400, and then leave with $10,000 cash, go back where they came from. People come from Europe, people come from South America. So if you're here at the right time, you meet cool travelers who aren't necessarily poor. And I mean, it's a pro and a con. Like, one thing I liked about San Fran is people do have a lot of money. So it's almost like a competition to pay for dinner and stuff like that, and who can ball out and floss the most. And you really don't get that here. You don't get the feeling of it. People like, again, it depends where you are, who you live with, what circles you run in, but it's not the culture to be real capitalist here outside of those ranches, it seems. You know, there's a lot of communism and Marxism and neoliberalism and college students coming in and spreading that shit. West Coast, the hippie lifestyle, you know, Bernie. People fucking love Bernie here. And, you know, it's like 60-40. There are more capitalist Republicans and stuff like that. But there's also a strong blue left coast type thing going on here, which is, you know, again, it's fine. It is what it is. Are people friendly here? They're not unfriendly. I'd say people are relatively friendly here. I'd say average actually. It's not like Seattle freeze, but it's not like San Fran warmth. I'd say it's pretty average, depending on where you are. Again, 100,000 is not a huge pool. And that's a con as well, is like, you're going to see people again and again and again. So that's something you need to be prepared for, is to try not to burn your bridges and know that there's a limited pool of people. There are a lot of people coming in through seasonal work and through school and stuff like that, but otherwise you're capped at who's here is here, basically. So that's, I guess, the majority. You know, there's surf. The surf is not very good. I do surf here. It's fucking cold and there's sharks, and that sucks. Basketball culture is not so good coming from Seattle. You know, there's a lot of hippie stuff to do, but it feels small, and it's like, you know, 100,000 people, that's like my internet reach. I mean, it's more than my internet reach, but in the next few years it won't be. So it does feel quite small, and I would consider moving down to San Fran or moving to Hawaii or something like that. And a lot of that has to do, I mean, for me, I love the geography. It's awesome. I love the food. It's very easy to be healthy. The culture is whatever. It's not amazing to me. It's not so bad. But a big con for me is how hard it is to travel to and from here. It adds so much time and money onto every trip and makes it so that I don't have as many friends visit me as I would if I lived somewhere else. So that's all things that, you know, it's okay. Okay, cost. Yeah, that's something. And one of the reasons, that's a pro of this as well. One of the reasons, if you made it all the way to the end, what's the cost of living out here? I would say it's relatively cheap compared to the West Coast. It's cheaper than San Fran, it's cheaper than Seattle, it's cheaper than the Bay, it's cheaper than LA. You can get reasonable housing for $500 a month. Food can be a little bit pricey, not necessarily pricey compared to the big cities, but you're also getting much higher quality food for what you're paying. You could feel healthy, have that glow, nice skin, and so on. Let's see, other pros and cons. I'm trying to think. Those are the main things. Pros, cheap, amazing geography, great food. Cons, culture depending on who you are, where you live. Cons, fucking hard to get to. I mean, that can be a pro, but again, if you like to travel and host people, you would be better based at a more major city. So overall, I like it. I'm happy to be here. The pros outweigh the cons and have outweighed the cons for 4 years, which is why I've been using it as my home base. And I'll try to keep this series going because people really like it. When I've really only lived in 2 places for more than a year, so that's all I can do on those. But as I travel, I'll try to do more. You know, I was in Sweden. What's it like to live in Sweden? I was in Provence. Can do what's it like to live in Provence. I will do more of that because it's fun. It's cool to see. That's how we learn how to live better, to see how we live in different places, what life is like, and it's fun to imagine. So if you have any questions, you can leave them below. If you live here and there's something important that I missed, you can throw it down below, and it'd be cool to see. So, and also again, your experience is going to be different depending on where exactly you live in Humboldt. It's a big place, but I find this stuff to be generally true. Peace, much love. See you in the comments. See you in Humboldt.